Zenith Calloway had built his empire on precision. Every surface in his 60-story tower gleamed under LED lights calibrated to exactly 4,000 Kelvin. Every desk sat precisely 43 inches from the nearest wall. Every employee knew that disorder wasn't just discouraged, it was impossible. His obsessive-compulsive disorder had shaped his life into a masterpiece of control, where chaos couldn't breathe, let alone survive. But at 11:47 p.m. on a bitter January night, Zenith discovered something that shattered his carefully constructed world. Amaryllis Jenkins, a 62-year-old night cleaner, asleep in his $7,000 ergonomic chair, her worn shoes tucked beneath his mahogany desk, a faded blanket pulled up to her chin. What he did next would cost her everything she had left. And what she did in return would teach him what true wealth actually meant. Before we dive into Amaryllis' story, let me ask you something. You're here because you appreciate real stories about real struggles and real redemption, right? Yet here's something surprising. Over 70% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button. I see you nodding, recognizing yourself, and that's okay. But here's the thing. This community is built on people like you who understand that karma has a beautiful way of balancing the scales. So do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, give this video a like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Georgia, New York, Manchester, Netherlands, wherever you're calling home tonight. Let's build this community together. Because stories like Amaryllis's deserve to be heard. Now let's get back to what happened in that office. Zenith Calloway hadn't planned to return to Calloway Technologies that night. His penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue awaited him with its perfectly aligned furniture and color-coded closets. But a contract discrepancy had nagged at his mind during dinner, a single misplaced decimal point in a merger document that his team had somehow missed. The thought had scratched at his consciousness like sandpaper on silk until he'd abandoned his meal and driven back to the office. The executive floor was supposed to be empty. Security had confirmed it. The cleaning crew worked on a strict schedule. Floors 1 through 40 between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Floors 41 through 59 between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. Executive floor 60 from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. It was 11:47 p.m. Nobody should have been on his floor. Yet there she was. Zenith stood frozen in his doorway, his hands still on the light switch he'd flipped on. The sudden brightness had caused Amaryllis to stir, her weathered face creasing with confusion as she struggled awake, the blanket falling away to reveal a cleaning uniform that had seen better days. "Mr. Calloway!" She scrambled upright, her movements stiff, painful. "I'm so sorry, sir. I wasn't supposed to. Get out of my chair." His voice came out flat, cold. Not angry yet, just calculating. Amaryllis stood, her legs trembling. She was shorter than he'd expected, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun and hands that bore the evidence of decades of hard labor. Scarred knuckles, calluses, nails worn down to nothing. "I can explain, Mr. Calloway. Please. I know how this looks." "You know how this looks." Zenith stepped into his office, his eyes cataloging every violation. The blanket, where had that even come from? His chair adjusted to a different height. The desk, with what appeared to be crumbs near the corner. Crumbs on his desk. "You're sleeping in my personal space, eating at my desk, contaminating my workspace with—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. His hands had begun to tremble. "I wasn't eating at your desk, sir. I would never. Those crumbs are from 3 days ago. I've been meaning to—" "3 days?" His voice rose an octave. "You've been sleeping here for 3 days?" "No, no, sir." Amaryllis's voice cracked. "Just tonight. Just this once. I'm so sorry. My situation, it's temporary. I just needed—" "I don't care about your situation." Zenith pulled out his phone. "I care that you violated every protocol, every boundary, every—" He stopped, noticing something else. His small refrigerator, barely visible under his credenza, was open a crack. "Did you take food from my refrigerator?" Amaryllis's silence was answer enough. "That's theft. Mr. Calloway, please." Tears had begun streaming down her face. "I'll pay you back, every penny. I just—" I lost my apartment 2 weeks ago. The building got sold and everyone got evicted, and I haven't found anywhere I can afford yet. The shelters are full, and I can't sleep on the street because I have to be here for my shift and... Enough! Zenith dialed security. Harold? Yes, this is Mr. Calloway. I'm in my office. I need you to contact the police immediately. I'm pressing charges for trespassing, theft, and corporate espionage. Espionage? Amaryllis's voice turned sharp through her tears. I clean toilets for a living. What would I do with your corporate secrets? Harold, did you hear me? Police, now! As Zenith waited for security to arrive, he watched Amaryllis gather her meager belongings. The blanket, a small bag that appeared to contain toiletries and a change of clothes. She moved with a dignity that irritated him further. She should have been groveling. Instead, she stood straight, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. 17 years, she said quietly. I've worked in this building for 17 years, never missed a shift, never stole a single paperclip until I took that yogurt from your fridge last night. Never caused a problem for anyone. Congratulations on your sterling record, Zenith replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm sure that'll comfort you when you're explaining this to the judge. Something flickered in Amaryllis's eyes then. Not anger exactly, but a kind of weary recognition. You don't remember me, do you? Should I? 7 years ago, you came to work early one morning, around 5 a.m. You were having some kind of episode, touching the door frame over and over, counting. I was finishing up the floor. I didn't say anything, didn't stare. I just kept working and let you do what you needed to do. When you finally came out of it, you looked at me and I smiled and said, we all got our things, Mr. Calloway. Yours ain't no worse than anyone else's. Zenith had no memory of this. You thanked me, Amaryllis continued. Said I was kind. Left a $50 tip in an envelope on the cleaning cart with my name on it. I leave tips for the cleaning staff all the time. Not like that, you don't. That $50 bought my granddaughter her first pair of glasses. She could finally see the board at school. Harold arrived with 2 police officers before Zenith could respond. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and procedures. The officers were professional but clearly uncomfortable. Amaryllis Jenkins wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. She was a homeless woman in her 60s who'd fallen asleep on the job. But Zenith Calloway was insistent. He wanted charges pressed, all of them. The senior officer, a broad-shouldered man named Detective Morrison, pulled Zenith aside. Mr. Calloway, between you and me, the DA probably won't pursue this. Maybe let her go with a warning? She's already lost her job. Your security director fired her on the spot. That's not enough. Not enough? Morrison's eyebrows rose. Sir, she's 62 years old and homeless. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish? Consequences, Zenith replied. I'm hoping to accomplish consequences. They arrested Amaryllis Jenkins at 1:23 a.m. Zenith watched from his office window as they escorted her through the lobby, her hands cuffed behind her back. She didn't look back at the building, didn't cry, just walked with her head up, her spine straight. It satisfied something dark in Zenith's chest. Order had been restored. The story hit the news cycle by noon the next day. Not because anyone cared particularly about one homeless woman getting arrested, but because Zenith Calloway cared. And Zenith Calloway was worth $4.3 billion. Billionaire prosecutes homeless cleaner for eating yogurt, read one headline. Tech mogul's OCD leads to elderly woman's arrest, read another. By evening, the story had gone viral. Social media erupted in outrage. The details made it worse. Amaryllis Jenkins, 62 years old, worked night shifts for 17 years, recently evicted, no criminal record, arrested for taking a 90-cent yogurt cup and sleeping in a chair. Zenith's PR team scrambled. They released a statement emphasizing security protocols and corporate integrity. It landed like a lead balloon. His ex-wife Simone called him at 9 p.m. They'd been divorced for 3 years, but she still felt entitled to commentary on his life choices. Have you lost your mind? Her voice crackled through his phone speaker. Hello to you too, Simone. Don't hello me. Do you have any idea what people are saying? They're calling you a monster. They're planning protests outside your building. Your stock dropped 2% today. The stock will recover. Your humanity might not. Simone's voice softened slightly. Z, I know your OCD makes contamination issues hard for you. I lived with it for 8 years, remember? But this? Pressing charges against a homeless woman for survival crimes? This isn't you. You don't know what's me anymore. Maybe not, but I know what's right and wrong, and this is wrong. She hung up before he could respond. Zenith spent the evening doing what he always did when stressed, organizing. He reorganized his home office, alphabetized his books by author's last name, then by publication date within each author, arranged his pens by color, then by length, cleaned his already spotless kitchen counters with antibacterial solution, wiping each surface exactly 7 times. It didn't help. The image of Amaryllis Jenkins kept intruding. The way she'd stood straight even in handcuffs. The way she'd mentioned his moment of vulnerability 7 years ago. The fact that she'd remembered his kindness when he couldn't even remember her face. At 2 a.m., unable to sleep, Zenith did something unusual. He Googled her name. Amaryllis Jenkins, he discovered, had quite a story. Widowed 12 years ago when her husband Tobias died of a heart attack. Raised 3 children as a single mother working multiple jobs. 2 of those children had died, one from complications of diabetes, one from gun violence. The third lived in California with her own family and had been trying for months to save enough money to bring her mother west. Amaryllis had been living in the same Brooklyn apartment for 28 years until the building sold. The new owners wanted to renovate and flip the units. They'd offered the tenants buyouts that didn't come close to covering first month, last month, and deposit elsewhere in the city. Most of the tenants were elderly or working poor. They'd scattered to shelters, to couches of relatives, to the streets. There were photos. Amaryllis at a community center, serving meals. Amaryllis at a church, organizing a clothing drive. Amaryllis receiving a volunteer award from the borough president for her work with homeless youth. The irony wasn't lost on Zenith. He closed his laptop and stared at his ceiling. His therapist, Dr. Okonkwo, had warned him years ago that his need for control stemmed from deep-seated fear. You control your environment because you couldn't control the chaos of your childhood, she'd said. But Zenith, not everything that feels threatening actually is. Sometimes your OCD lies to you. Was this one of those times? No, he decided. Amaryllis had violated his space, had stolen from him, had compromised the security of his entire operation. Those were facts, not feelings. He repeated this to himself until he almost believed it. The arraignment happened on a Thursday. Zenith didn't attend. His lawyers handled it. Amaryllis Jenkins stood before Judge Patricia Kensington and pleaded not guilty to trespassing and petty theft. The corporate espionage charge had been quietly dropped when even Zenith's legal team couldn't manufacture evidence. Bail was set at $500. Amaryllis didn't have it. She was remanded to custody at Rose M. Singer Center on Rikers Island. This detail made the news too. The optics kept getting worse. A billionaire putting a homeless grandmother in jail for eating yogurt. Late-night comedians had a field day. Saturday Night Live did a sketch. Protesters gathered outside Callaway Technologies carrying signs. Yogurt is not a crime, and billionaires not even once. Zenith's board of directors called an emergency meeting. Reginald Manchester, the silver-haired chairman, led the intervention. Zenith, you need to drop these charges immediately. No, this isn't a request, and I'm not an employee you can order around. I'm the founder and majority shareholder. Reginald leaned forward, his jaw tight. You're also damaging this company's reputation beyond repair. Our clients are getting nervous. 3 contracts are under review. The Austin deal is threatening to walk. All because you couldn't let one tired old woman sleep in your chair. It's about principle. It's about ego. This came from Davina Chen, the youngest board member and the only one who regularly challenged Zenith. You're humiliating this woman to prove a point, but the only thing you're proving is that you value control more than compassion. I value accountability. You value revenge, Davina shot back. She made you feel violated, so you're violating her right back. You're taking her freedom, the one thing she has left, because she dared to exist in your space without permission. The meeting ended badly. Zenith refused to budge. The board members left shaking their heads, already strategizing damage control. That night, Zenith received an envelope delivered by courier. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined paper, the handwriting shaky but careful. Dear Mr. Calloway, I'm writing this from Rikers. They give us paper and pencils during rec time. I wanted to say I'm sorry again for what I did. I know sorry don't fix it, but I mean it anyway. I also wanted to tell you something. You're scared. I know scared when I see it because I've been scared my whole life. Scared of being poor, scared of losing my kids, scared of ending up alone and forgotten. Fear makes us do things that ain't who we really are. You're scared I contaminated your space, messed up your order. But Mr. Calloway, I didn't contaminate nothing. I'm just a person who was tired and cold and needed somewhere safe for a few hours. That's all I took from you. A few hours of feeling safe. What you took from me was my dignity, my freedom, my hope that maybe the world still had some kindness left in it. I forgive you anyway, because holding on to anger takes energy I don't have to spare. And because I remember that morning 7 years ago when you were counting and touching and trying so hard to hold yourself together. You were human that morning, vulnerable, real. I hope you find your way back to that person. With no hard feelings. Amaryllis Jenkins. Zenith read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it precisely in thirds and placed it in his desk drawer, under his perfectly organized files. He didn't respond. But he didn't throw it away either. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Amaryllis Jenkins became a cause célèbre. A GoFundMe campaign raised $80,000 in 3 days. Legal aid attorneys from Columbia Law School took her case pro bono. Activists organized weekly protests outside Calloway Technologies, their numbers growing each week. Zenith tried to ignore it all. He focused on work, on the Austin deal, on the new AI integration project that would revolutionize their platform. But the world wouldn't let him forget. His favorite restaurant suddenly had no available reservations. The maitre d', usually obsequious, had been coldly polite on the phone. I'm sorry, Mr. Calloway. We're fully booked for the foreseeable future. Zenith checked their website 5 minutes later. Plenty of tables available. His gym membership was under review due to behavioral concerns. The manager, a woman named Keisha, who'd always greeted him warmly, wouldn't meet his eyes when she delivered the news. His barber of 10 years called to cancel their standing appointment. My daughter follows this story, he explained awkwardly. She's real upset about it. Says I shouldn't take money from you. I got to think about my family, Mr. Calloway. I hope you understand. Zenith understood perfectly. He was being canceled, socially executed for the crime of demanding accountability. It enraged him, but it also unsettled him in ways he couldn't quite name. The worst moment came on a Sunday afternoon. Zenith had ventured to Central Park, seeking the solace of his usual bench near the Bethesda fountain. He'd been sitting for perhaps 10 minutes when a woman in her 30s approached, her expression carefully neutral. Excuse me, are you Zenith Calloway? He considered lying. Yes. I'm Mariana Jenkins, Amaryllis's granddaughter. Zenith's stomach dropped. The girl from the story, the one who'd needed glasses. Mariana sat down beside him without asking permission. She was pretty in an understated way, with her grandmother's cheekbones and something fiercer in her eyes. I'm not here to yell at you, she said. Though Lord knows I want to. I'm here to tell you about my grandmother. I don't... You're going to listen. Mariana's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Because you took away her freedom. But you can't take away her story. That belongs to her and to me and to everyone who loved her. Zenith said nothing. My grandmother raised me after my mother died. I was 7. Grandma Amaryllis worked 3 jobs to keep us fed and housed. She cleaned offices at night, worked cafeteria shifts at my school during the day, and did laundry for rich people on the weekends. I never went hungry, never missed a day of school, never felt unloved. Mariana's voice cracked slightly but didn't break. When I was 12, I started getting headaches. Couldn't see the board in class. The school nurse said I needed glasses. You know what glasses cost when you're poor? Everything. Insurance doesn't cover them if you're on Medicaid. We were looking at $200–300 minimum. She turned to face Zenith directly. Then one day, Grandma came home with cash. $50 she said some kind businessman had tipped her for good work. We went to the vision center that weekend, got my eyes tested, picked out frames. Those glasses changed my life, Mr. Calloway. I could see. I could learn. I graduated high school with honors because I could finally see the material. Went to community college on scholarship. Became a paralegal. Zenith felt something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. That kind businessman was you, Mariana continued. Grandma told me that story every time I accomplished something. See what a little kindness can do, she'd say. Mr. Calloway's $50 bought you a future. She stood up, brushing invisible dirt from her jeans. I came here to tell you that the man who gave that tip, he's still in there somewhere. And the man who put my 62-year-old grandmother in jail for being homeless, he's a stranger wearing that good man's face. I don't know what happened to you, Mr. Calloway, but I'm praying you find your way back. She walked away before Zenith could respond. He sat on that bench for 3 hours, watching joggers and tourists and families, thinking about $50 and futures and the man he used to be. Dr. Okonkwo's office smelled like lavender and old books. Zenith had been seeing her for 8 years, ever since his OCD had escalated from manageable quirk to life-disrupting condition. She was one of the few people he trusted completely. Talk to me about what happened, Dr. Okonkwo said, settling into her chair with her ever-present notepad. She was a woman in her 50s with warm brown skin and eyes that missed nothing. Zenith told her everything: the discovery, the arrest, the letter, the protests, Mariana in the park. Dr. Okonkwo listened without interrupting, her pen making occasional notes. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. What are you feeling right now? She finally asked. Frustrated, angry, misunderstood. Anything else? Zenith shifted in his seat. Confused, maybe guilty. Tell me about the guilt. I don't know if it's guilt, it's just everyone keeps saying I'm a monster, that I'm cruel, but I'm not. I just needed... He stopped, struggling for words. She violated my space, doctor. You know how serious that is for me. The contamination anxiety alone. Was the chair actually contaminated? What? The chair. When you had it analyzed by your cleaning service, did they find anything dangerous? Bed bugs, bacteria, anything that posed an actual health risk? Zenith was quiet. He hadn't had it analyzed. He'd had it destroyed. I needed to get rid of it. I'm not questioning that. I'm asking whether your fear of contamination matched the actual risk, or whether your OCD was amplifying a minimal threat into a catastrophic one. Does it matter? She still stole from me, still violated protocols. It matters enormously, Zenith, because if your OCD convinced you that a tired elderly woman posed an existential threat when she actually posed none, then you didn't respond to reality. You responded to your illness, and you made Amaryllis Jenkins pay the price for your symptoms. The words hit like a slap. That's not fair, isn't it? Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. Let me ask you something. If you'd come to the office and found, say, your chief technology officer asleep in your chair, someone with comparable power and resources, would you have pressed charges? That's different. How? Because my CTO wouldn't be sleeping there out of homelessness. There'd be some other explanation, a prank maybe, or you'd extend them grace. You'd assume positive intent. You'd recognize them as fully human and deserving of compassion. Dr. Okonkwo's voice was gentle, but unrelenting. Amaryllis Jenkins didn't get that grace because she was powerless. You could punish her without consequence, so you did. I punished her because she broke the rules. No, Zenith, you punished her because she made you feel afraid. And instead of dealing with that fear, instead of recognizing it as an OCD response and working through it, you externalized it. You made her the monster so you wouldn't have to face the monster inside yourself. Zenith wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself, but sitting in that quiet office with Dr. Okonkwo's patient eyes on him, he couldn't find the words. What do I do? He finally asked. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to drop the charges and make this whole thing go away. But part of me feels like that would be admitting I was wrong, and I wasn't wrong. She did steal from me. She did trespass. Those are facts, but facts without context are just data. Context is what makes them meaningful. And the context here is that a desperate woman made a desperate choice that harmed no one. She harmed me. Did she? Really? Or did she trigger your OCD, which harmed you all on its own? Zenith had no answer for that. The turning point came on a Wednesday evening, in the most unexpected way. Zenith was working late, a habit he'd developed to avoid going home to his too-empty apartment. Around 8 p.m., his assistant Nadine buzzed him. "Mr. Calloway, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." "Who is it?" A pause. "She says her name is Octavia Jenkins, Amaryllis's daughter, the one in California." "Send her in." Octavia Jenkins was nothing like her mother. Where Amaryllis was soft and worn, Octavia was sharp and polished. She wore a business suit that spoke of modest success and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd fought for everything she had. She didn't sit when Zenith gestured to the chairs. She stood, her purse clutched in both hands. "I flew here from Sacramento," she said without preamble. "Took out a payday loan to afford the ticket because I had to look you in the eye when I said this. I'm listening. Drop the charges against my mother. Ms. Jenkins, let me finish." Her voice shook but didn't break. "I know what my mother did was wrong. I'm not here to tell you it wasn't. Sleeping in your chair, taking your food. Yes, those things violated your rules. But Mr. Calloway, do you know what it takes to break a woman like my mother?" Zenith said nothing. "Everything. It takes losing her husband of 37 years to a heart attack he might have survived if we'd been able to afford better health care. It takes losing her son, my brother Marcus, to diabetes complications because he rationed his insulin to make it last longer. It takes losing her daughter, my sister Shanice, to a stray bullet in a drive-by shooting because we lived in the only neighborhood we could afford." Octavia's eyes were dry, but her voice carried an ocean of pain. "It takes watching her apartment building, her home for nearly 3 decades, get sold out from under her. It takes applying for affordable housing and being put on a wait list that's 7 years long. It takes shelters turning her away because they're at capacity. It takes choosing between food and a motel room. It takes 72 hours of not sleeping because the streets aren't safe for a woman her age." She took a step closer to Zenith's desk. "My mother is the strongest person I know, and you broke her with one phone call to the police. She's in jail right now, Mr. Calloway. She shares a cell with women a third her age. She's terrified. She's humiliated. And for what? For trying to survive?" "Your mother could have asked for help," Zenith said quietly. "There are programs, services. You think she didn't try?" Octavia's laugh was bitter. "You think she just went straight from house to sleeping in your chair? She applied everywhere, did everything right. But the system is designed to fail people like her. And when the system failed, when she had nowhere else to turn, she made a choice to rest in a place where she felt safe, where she'd worked for 17 years, where she'd never been anything but reliable and trustworthy." She set her purse down and pulled out a folder. "These are character references from her pastor, from the community center where she volunteers, from the families whose children she mentored, from her former neighbors. 47 letters, Mr. Calloway. 47 people who know that Amaryllis Jenkins is a good woman who made one mistake because she was out of options." Zenith took the folder, opened it. The first letter was from a Reverend Thaddeus Moore. "I have known Amaryllis Jenkins for 23 years. In that time, I have watched her give her last dollar to someone with less. I have watched her work herself to exhaustion to provide for her family. I have watched her grieve losses that would destroy lesser souls. And I have watched her rise each time with her faith intact and her compassion undiminished. The woman you have imprisoned is not a criminal. She is a saint who stumbled. And if there is any justice in this world, you will recognize that and act accordingly." Zenith closed the folder. He looked at Octavia, who was watching him with an expression that mixed hope and desperation in equal measure. "Why did you come here?" he asked. "Why not just let your lawyers handle this?" "Because I needed you to see me, To see that my mother isn't just a news story or a cause or a statistic. She's a real person with people who love her. And I hoped, that maybe if you saw that, you'd remember that you're a real person too. Not just a billionaire, not just someone with OCD, a human being who's capable of mercy. She picked up her purse. I'm staying in New York until the trial. I've got a cousin in Queens with a pull-out couch. If you decide to do the right thing, you can reach me through your assistant. If you don't, her voice finally broke. If you don't, I'll be in that courtroom every single day, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. She left without waiting for a response. Zenith sat alone in his office, the folder of letters on his desk. Outside his window, the city glittered with 10 million lives, each one complicated, each one struggling, each one deserving of something he'd forgotten how to give. Mercy. Zenith didn't sleep that night. He read all 47 letters. He read Amaryllis's letter from Rikers again. He pulled up the news articles and social media posts, forcing himself to see what the world saw, not a property crime, but a moral catastrophe. At 3 a.m., he did something he hadn't done in years. He called his father. Elijah Calloway answered on the fourth ring, his voice rough with sleep. Zenith, what's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Zenith paced his apartment. The phone pressed to his ear. Do you remember when I was 10 and I locked myself in the bathroom for 6 hours because I was convinced my hands were contaminated? A long pause. I remember. You talked me out. You sat on the other side of the door and told me stories until I calmed down enough to open it. And when I finally came out, you didn't yell. You didn't punish me. You just hugged me and said, your brain lies to you sometimes, son, but I'm always going to tell you the truth. I remember, Elijah said again, softer now. What's the truth now, Dad? Am I a monster for pressing charges? Or am I just someone protecting himself the only way he knows how? His father was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 7 decades of living. The truth is, you're scared. You've been scared since you were a little boy trying to make sense of a world that felt too big and too chaotic. And I love you for finding ways to survive that fear. Your rituals, your routines, your need for control, they've helped you build an empire. But son, they've also built a prison. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've locked yourself away so completely that you can't recognize suffering when it's right in front of you. That woman, Amaryllis, she wasn't threatening you. She was just trying to survive in a world that's too big and too chaotic for her too. And instead of recognizing that kinship, you punished her for it. Zenith felt tears prick his eyes. What do I do? You know what to do. You've always known. The question is whether you're brave enough to do it. They talked for another hour. When Zenith finally hung up, the sun was beginning to rise over the city. He made coffee, showered, dressed in his usual precise way. But something had shifted. Something had cracked in the careful architecture of his justifications. At 9 a.m., he called his legal team. Drop all charges against Amaryllis Jenkins, immediately. His lead attorney, Marcus Reynolds, sounded stunned. Mr. Calloway, are you certain? We've invested significant resources in this case. The precedent alone. I don't care about precedent. Drop the charges. Today. Sir, she's due to be arraigned again tomorrow. If we drop now, it'll look like we're capitulating to public pressure. Let it look like that. I don't care what it looks like. Just get it done. Marcus hesitated. Is there anything else? Zenith thought about the letters, about Octavia's face, about his father's voice. Yes, set up a meeting with Miss Jenkins's legal team. I want to speak with her. And Marcus, find out what it would cost to establish a fund for homeless service workers. Something substantial. Something that would actually make a difference. How substantial? 10 million to start. We'll increase it if needed. The silence on the other end was profound. Mr. Calloway, that's incredibly generous. It's incredibly overdue. Make it happen. Amaryllis Jenkins was released from Rikers Island on a Thursday morning at 11:47 a.m., exactly the same time Zenith had discovered her sleeping in his chair 3 weeks earlier. The symmetry wasn't intentional, but it felt meaningful nonetheless. Zenith wasn't there. He'd wanted to be, had almost driven out to the facility, but Dr. Okonkwo had advised against it. Let her have this moment without you, she'd said. Let her breathe free air without her jailer watching. So instead, Zenith waited in a conference room at Callaway Technologies, his palms sweating, his heart racing. The meeting had been arranged for 2 p.m. Amaryllis's attorneys had agreed, though they'd made it clear their client wasn't required to speak to him. She's doing this as a kindness to you, the lead attorney, a fierce young woman named Justice Williams, had said. I want you to remember that. At 1:58 p.m., Zenith's assistant Nadine called. They're here, Mr. Calloway. Send them in. The door opened. Amaryllis Jenkins entered first, flanked by Justice Williams and Octavia. She looked smaller than Zenith remembered, more fragile. The 3 weeks in jail had hollowed her out somehow, carved away something essential. But she walked with her head up, always with her head up. Ms. Jenkins. Zenith stood, resisting the urge to straighten his tie, to count the steps between them. Thank you for agreeing to see me. My lawyer advised against it, Amaryllis said quietly. But I'm old-fashioned. I believe in looking people in the eye. They sat. Zenith on one side of the conference table, the 3 women on the other, an ocean of polished mahogany between them. I owe you an apology, Zenith began. The words he'd practiced all morning suddenly felt inadequate. What I did to you was, I can't even begin to justify it. I told myself it was about rules and protocols and security, but the truth is much simpler and much worse. I was angry that you made me feel vulnerable, and I punished you for it. Amaryllis watched him with those steady eyes. I put you in jail for 3 weeks for the crime of being tired and homeless and human. I used my power and my money and my influence to crush someone who had none of those things. And I did it while telling myself I was in the right. Zenith's voice cracked. Ms. Jenkins, I was wrong. Profoundly, inexcusably wrong. And I'm sorry. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, Amaryllis spoke. Thank you for saying that. It's not enough. No, she agreed. It's not. But it's a start. Octavia leaned forward. What happens now, Mr. Calloway? An apology is nice, but my mother needs more than nice words. She needs housing. She needs her dignity back. She needs... I know. Zenith opened the folder in front of him. I've drafted a proposal. I'd like you to review it. And your attorney can make sure everything is legally sound. He slid copies across the table. First, a formal public apology from both me and Callaway Technologies, taking full responsibility for what happened. Second, a financial settlement of $500,000 with no NDAs or gag orders attached. You're free to tell your story however you choose. Justice Williams' eyebrows rose. She scanned the document quickly, her legal mind already processing the implications. Third, Zenith continued, I've purchased a 2-bedroom apartment in your old neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's yours, free and clear. The deed will be in your name. Property taxes paid for the next 20 years. Amaryllis made a small sound. Not quite a gasp. Something deeper. Fourth, a $10 million fund for homeless service workers, to be administered by a board that includes advocates from the homeless community. It'll provide emergency housing assistance, medical care, job training, and crisis support. 10 million? Octavia breathed. To start, I'm committing to match community donations dollar for dollar up to another 10 million. And I'm establishing an annual audit to ensure the funds are being used effectively. Zenith looked directly at Amaryllis. I can't undo what I did to you. I can't give you back those 3 weeks. But I can try to make sure no one else ends up in your situation because they had nowhere safe to sleep. Amaryllis was crying now, silent tears streaming down her weathered face. Octavia had wrapped an arm around her mother's shoulders. Justice Williams cleared her throat. Mr. Calloway, this is far beyond what we expected. My client will need time to review and consider. I don't need time. Amaryllis's voice was soft but clear. I accept. Mama, we should at least read through. I accept, Amaryllis repeated. She looked at Zenith, and something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition. Not because of the money, because I believe you mean it. I believe you're trying to be better. Zenith felt something loosen in his chest, something he'd been holding tight for 3 weeks, maybe longer, maybe his whole life. There's one more thing, he said. It's not in the proposal because it's not legal or financial. It's personal. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opened it. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a pendant, a tiny house with a heart-shaped door. I know it's not much, probably presumptuous, but I wanted you to have something that represented what I hope this is. A new beginning, a safe place, a home. Amaryllis stared at the necklace for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room, including herself. She stood up, walked around the table, and hugged Zenith Calloway. He froze. His OCD screamed at him. Contamination, violation, disorder. But Zenith took a breath and hugged her back. "Thank you," Amaryllis whispered. "Thank you for finding your way back." The public apology went viral for different reasons than the arrest had. Billionaire apologizes to homeless woman. He jailed read the headlines, but this time the comments section was different, quieter, more thoughtful. People shared their own stories of homelessness, of desperation, of times they'd been shown mercy or denied it. The conversation shifted from outrage to reflection. The $10 million fund launched a week later. Zenith held a press conference with Amaryllis by his side. She spoke about her experience with a grace that humbled everyone listening. Zenith spoke about his OCD, his fear, his journey toward understanding that control and compassion weren't mutually exclusive. Donations poured in. The matching fund was fully subscribed within a month. But the real transformation happened quietly, in the spaces between the headlines. Zenith began therapy twice a week instead of once. He worked with Dr. Okonkwo on distinguishing between real threats and OCD manufactured ones. It was grueling work. There were setbacks, but there was also progress. He visited Amaryllis's new apartment, forcing himself to sit on her furniture, to drink from her cups, to exist in a space that wasn't perfectly controlled. His anxiety spiked. He had to excuse himself twice to practice breathing exercises in the bathroom. But he did it. Amaryllis, for her part, showed him photographs, her grandchildren visiting from California. Her daughter Octavia, who decided to relocate to New York to be closer to her mother. The community gatherings she'd started hosting in her living room. Other homeless folks, service workers, anyone who needed a safe place to rest. "You gave me more than an apartment," she told Zenith during one visit. "You gave me back my purpose." "I took it away first," Zenith reminded her. "And then you gave it back doubled. That takes courage, Mr. Calloway. More courage than most people ever show." Slowly, painfully, they built something that looked almost like friendship. 6 months after the settlement, Zenith received an invitation to speak at a conference on corporate responsibility. He almost declined. Public speaking had never been his strength, and speaking about his failures felt impossible. But Dr. Okonkwo encouraged him. "This is how you complete the transformation, by being vulnerable in public the way you were vulnerable in private." So Zenith accepted. The conference was held at a hotel in Manhattan. 200 business leaders, activists, and journalists packed the ballroom. Zenith stood at the podium, his notes in front of him, his hands shaking slightly. "My name is Zenith Calloway," he began. "And 6 months ago, I put a 62-year-old homeless woman in jail for eating a yogurt cup and sleeping in my chair." The room was utterly silent. "I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to tell you what I learned. I learned that power without empathy is just tyranny in a suit. I learned that my mental illness, my OCD, doesn't excuse cruelty. It just explains it. And I learned that redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to change." He told them about Amaryllis, about her letters, her grace, her forgiveness, about the fund, the apartment, the ongoing work to address systemic homelessness. "But here's what I really want you to understand," Zenith said, looking out at the sea of faces. "I didn't change because it was good for business, though it was. I didn't change because it was good PR, though it was that too. I changed because a woman I'd wronged showed me more mercy than I deserved. And that mercy broke something open in me that had been locked away for decades." He paused, gathering courage for the hardest part. "If you take nothing else from my story, take this. The people we have power over are still people. Their struggles are real. Their dignity matters. And our responsibility to them doesn't end at the property line or the employment contract. It extends to every human interaction, every decision, every moment we choose between control and compassion. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. Zenith saw tears in some eyes. In others, recognition. After the speech, a young woman approached him. She was maybe 25, dressed professionally, her hair in neat locks. "Mr. Calloway, I'm Destiny Washington. I work in HR for a tech startup." "Nice to meet you. I wanted to thank you. Your story, it made me realize something. We had a situation last month. A junior developer was sleeping in the office. My boss wanted to fire him. I was about to process the paperwork." Zenith's chest tightened. "What did you do?" "I talked to the developer first. Turned out he'd just been evicted. Couldn't afford first and last month's rent anywhere new on our salary. My boss wanted to make an example of him, but I remembered your story. Instead, I helped him apply for emergency housing assistance, connected him with a nonprofit that helps young people in crisis." Destiny smiled. "He's still with us, doing great work, and all it took was someone choosing compassion over punishment." Zenith felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for changing. It matters. More than you know." 1 year to the day after Zenith had found Amaryllis sleeping in his chair, they met for dinner. Not at some fancy restaurant where Zenith would normally dine, but at a soul food place in Brooklyn that Amaryllis loved. The restaurant was warm and loud, full of families and laughter. Zenith's OCD twitched at the chaos, the crowded tables, the shared dishes, the visible kitchen. But he breathed through it. They ordered fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread. Amaryllis insisted on paying, using money from the settlement that she'd carefully budgeted. "This past year has been strange," Amaryllis said, breaking apart a piece of cornbread. "Best and worst of my life all mixed together." "I'm sorry again for the worst part. I know, and I forgave you. But I want you to understand something, Zenith." She used his first name now, a privilege she'd earned. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I still have nightmares about Rikers. I still flinch when I see police. What you did to me left marks that won't fade. I know. But those marks are teaching me things about resilience, about grace, about how suffering can be transformed into something useful if we're brave enough." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You hurt me, and then you helped me. Both things are true. Both things matter." Zenith nodded, not trusting his voice. "The question is, what are we going to do with it? Because we could let this story end here, with a settlement and an apology and everyone moving on. Or we could let it be the beginning of something bigger." "What did you have in mind?" Amaryllis's eyes lit up. "I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit, using my settlement money and my story to help other homeless folks. Not just housing assistance, though, that's important, but advocacy, teaching people how to navigate the system, giving them a voice. That's brilliant. I want you to help, not with money, well, maybe with some money, but with your platform, your connections, your ability to make things happen." Zenith felt something slot into place, a purpose beyond profit, beyond control, beyond fear. "Yes," he said. "Absolutely yes." They talked for 3 hours, made plans, dreamed big. By the time they left the restaurant, they had the outline of what would become the Jenkins Calloway Foundation for Housing Justice. Outside, under the Brooklyn streetlights, Amaryllis hugged Zenith goodbye. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she asked. "What?" "A year ago, you saw me as a problem to be solved, a contamination to be removed. Now you see me as a person. That's the real miracle. Not the money, not the apartment. The fact that you learned to see me." Zenith hugged her back. "Thank you for teaching me how." 5 years later, the Jenkins Calloway Foundation had housed over 2,000 people. Zenith had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Calloway Technologies to focus on the foundation full-time. His replacement as CEO was Davina Chen, the board member who'd called him out in that first meeting. Amaryllis, now 67, ran the foundation's outreach programs. She'd become a nationally recognized advocate for housing rights, testifying before Congress, speaking at universities, changing hearts and minds everywhere she went. Zenith's OCD was better managed, though not cured. He'd accepted that it never would be fully cured. But he'd learned to live with it, to work around it, to prevent it from turning him into the kind of man who put grandmothers in jail. On a Tuesday afternoon, Zenith visited Amaryllis's apartment. She was babysitting her great-grandson, a chubby-cheeked toddler named Elijah, named after Zenith's father, who'd passed away the year before. "He's getting so big," Zenith said, watching the little boy stack blocks. "That's what babies do." Amaryllis handed Zenith a cup of tea. "They grow, they change, they become something new." "Is that what happened to us? We grew up?" "Something like that." Amaryllis settled into her chair, a comfortable recliner that she'd picked out herself. "You know what I think about sometimes?" "What's that?" "That night you found me in your office. What if you'd made a different choice? What if you'd just woken me up, maybe given me a warning, sent me on my way?" Zenith had thought about this too. We wouldn't be here. The foundation wouldn't exist. All those people we've helped. Exactly. Sometimes our worst moments become our greatest gifts. Not because the bad thing was good, but because we chose to transform it. Little Elijah toddled over to Zenith, offering him a block. Zenith took it, fighting the urge to wipe it clean. It was probably covered in toddler germs. Definitely hadn't been sanitized. He built a tower with the little boy anyway. "You've come a long way," Amaryllis observed. "We both have." "No," Amaryllis shook her head. "I was always who I am. Circumstances changed, but not my character. You, though, you transformed, became someone new. That takes real courage." Zenith watched Elijah knock down the block tower with glee. "I had a good teacher," he said. The story of Zenith Calloway and Amaryllis Jenkins became famous in certain circles. Business schools taught it as a case study in corporate responsibility. Social justice organizations used it as an example of restorative justice. Churches preached sermons about it. But the real legacy wasn't in the headlines or the foundation or even the 2,000 people who'd found housing. The real legacy was in the small moments, the countless times Zenith chose compassion over control. The way Amaryllis's forgiveness had rippled outward, teaching others to forgive. The lives changed not by grand gestures, but by the daily choice to see each other as fully human. 10 years after that night in the office, Zenith and Amaryllis sat together at the Foundation's anniversary gala. Amaryllis, now 72, moved a bit slower. Zenith, now 53, had gray threading through his hair. They watched people mingle, formerly homeless folks who now had apartments, advocates who joined the cause, donors who'd been moved by their story. "Do you ever regret it?" Zenith asked quietly. "What happened that night?" Amaryllis thought for a long moment. "I regret the suffering, the fear, the 3 weeks in that cell. But the outcome?" She gestured at the room full of people whose lives had been touched by their work. "How could I regret this? Even though Zenith." Amaryllis turned to face him fully. "You're going to carry that guilt forever if you don't let it go. I've forgiven you. God's forgiven you. When are you going to forgive yourself?" "I don't know if I can." "Then let me help, just like you helped me." She took his hand. "You're a good man who did a bad thing and made it right. That's the whole story. That's the truth. Everything else is just noise." In that moment, surrounded by the evidence of their transformed relationship, Zenith finally believed her. The trauma hadn't disappeared. The memory of his cruelty would always haunt him, but it no longer defined him. He was more than his worst moment. They both were. And that, more than any settlement or apology or foundation, was the real miracle. Sometimes we meet people at our worst. Sometimes we meet them at theirs. The question is, what do we build from those meetings? Zenith Calloway and Amaryllis Jenkins built forgiveness from fury. They built community from isolation. They built hope from despair. Not because they were special people, but because they made a choice. Every single day they chose compassion over contempt, understanding over judgment, grace over grudges, and in making that choice, they transformed not just their own lives, but the lives of thousands of others. The billionaire who put a cleaner in jail learned that power means nothing without humanity. The cleaner who lost her freedom gained a platform to free others. And together they prove that redemption isn't just possible, it's what we're made for.